All right, we are officially live. Hello, hello to everybody that is out there. I have to tell you that this has been one of our highest registrations to date, which tells me that this is a topic that is happening at the dinner table, happening around the sofa and the television, happening on the telephone with your friends. And so we are excited to bring this topic to you today. My name is Tawana Bain, and I am the founder of the Derby Diversity Business Summit. We take business and community, we bridge them together to move culture forward. I'm really excited about the panel that we've curated for you all today. I'm going to allow them all to introduce themselves. We will begin with Helen, we'll move on to Kathy, then Dina, my good friend here, Nikki, and then Regina.
Thank you, and thank you so much for asking me to participate today. My name is Helen Arcantu. I'm the CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. We are a nonprofit whose mission is to eliminate racism.
Thank you.
I'm Kathy Miller-Perkins. I'm here in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm a psychologist and have a small consulting company. What we do is we help other companies instill their purpose into their culture. And I'm really glad to be here because I have a lot to learn. And my role here, I think, is to listen and learn more than anything.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hi, I'm Dina Cheney. I'm a small business owner. I started a company called Bosisi Designs. Bosisi means sisters in Zulu. And we help give underserved women an opportunity to work. And hopefully the more we sell, the more women we can hire and change the cycle of poverty.
Thank you so very much, Dina. Thank you for being here.
Hi everyone. My name is Nikki Lanier. I'm here in Louisville. I'm the Senior Vice President and Regional Executive for the Louisville Branch Office of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. And I've been in Louisville for about 18 years off and on, and very happy to be a part of this important, very critical conversation.
Thank you, Nikki.
Hello, everyone. I'm Regina Jackson. I live in Denver, Colorado. Oh, I'm probably, this is almost my 70th year on this earth. So I have been through this before. I was 17 when MLK was murdered, and we were exactly where we are today, okay? I started a business with my partner, Syra Rao, about a year ago called Race to Dinner, and we host dinners with white women to talk about racism, white supremacy, and how they can make things better for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Regina. And so before we get started, I want to thank everybody that is tuning in on different platforms with us. This is a much anticipated conversation. I also, normally don't have to do this, but I do want to lay some ground rules for today. This is a time in which our company is trying to look forward and understand, for those that were not as aware, what is happening? And then 2, how do we equip our white sisters to be able to stand up in solidarity with us as everything that is going on? This is not a discussion on whether or not racism exists or not. If you don't know that, this is probably not the platform for you. We are not here to educate. We are not here to judge. We are here to equip you with the tools that you need so that you can feel comfortable standing up to injustice and calling the racists out by name. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and I want to jump in. And Regina, I definitely want to start with you and let me tell you why. As I began to recognize, leaders lead. And there were so many people that were confused, perplexed. There was a lot of negativity that I was seeing online and on the internet. And I recognized that I needed to step up and be a leader. I have had the good fortune and blessing to have friends of very many different backgrounds. And so how can I use my voice? And as I began to research on how I wanted to approach this, I stumbled upon Race for Dinner. And man, I tell you, I could tell that that has evolved over time. And you all have seen a whole lot and heard a lot behind closed doors. Can you share with us some of the most memorable moments that you had when you had a white woman who was excited to have dinner and didn't realize that maybe she was holding on to some of the same biases or maybe even racist tendencies that she was going to lead others out of?
I think the best example we have had is we did a dinner in Chicago, and it was a group of white women, and one of them was a nurse. And she talked about a staff meeting where the white man, and that's usually the case for most of us, the man's in charge and we get to work for them, the boss, and there were 9 white women nurses and the boss, who was a white man. And he made the statement of, one of the goals we have for this year is not hiring so many foreign doctors. Now, she said she knew he didn't mean Swedes, he didn't mean Europeans, he meant Black and brown people. And she didn't say anything. She said she felt it. She knew that it was racist, but she didn't say anything. And she had been carrying, when she told that story, she said how relieved she was because she had been carrying that around with her because she knew she should have said something. And to me, that is the biggest concern that I have. And that is white silence, not speaking up, to Uncle Bob who tells racist jokes, not speaking up to your boss, not speaking up when you see people mistreated. That white silence is just as violent as the perpetrator.
I'd like to, if we can, I'd like to head over to you, Nikki, on that comment. Being silent can be just as violent as the perpetrator. As a Black woman in America, how so?
Silence in our culture, in American culture, denotes not just complacency, but complicit agreement. So that is what we are taught, what we're conditioned to understand silence to be in our culture. So silence in the face of racism is condoning racism. Mm-hmm. And so I love this concept of using something as benign as breaking bread together as an opportunity to challenge mental models, stereotypes, long-held belief systems that many of us hold and act upon unknowingly. But as much as it is important to speak out in moments like that in your community, in your workplace, in your homes, it's equally critical to speak out against the structural racism. So we need voices that are going to talk about the many ways and the many systematic structures through which racism lives and has been manifested. So to answer your question, the silence is deafening. The silence has historically been deafening. It has not only emboldened, I think, those who are a little racist to be a lot racist, those who are a lot racist to be extraordinarily so, but it's also helped to bring a muted voice to the plight of Black America.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Nikki.
I think that is very well said. Helen, I'm gonna come over to you. We are a panel. We have 3 Black women here and we have 3 white women here. And everybody is at a different stage in their understanding of race. And what really impressed me, when Deidre, who's just been phenomenal with helping curate and reach out to just diverse groups of people, when I looked at the work that you're doing, white woman, really ahead of the game, really fighting for injustice already before this war, if you will, race for war for justice happened, you were already aware that this existed and you were deploying tactics to really help the community to understand it. With that being said, this question is kind of twofold. As a white woman, one, when did you recognize that racism was real? And then two, how are you using your voice as a white woman to help educate on exactly what systemic racism is?
Well, let me say, I think probably early on, I learned that racism was real, but each day I learned more and more about racism. And, unfortunately, even with all the work that I've done, I'm just here, for where this is. And, for me, I've learned that it's really about listening. It's really about relationships. I love the race for dinner concept. You're talking and I'm like, ooh, I want to bring that to New Jersey. Because it really is about relationships. I mean, I think the thing that's most challenging is when we have a travesty like what's happened in this last week pop up, and suddenly people are trying to address it. I mean, obviously people want to help, but at the end of the day, the relationships can't always start in the midst of crisis. They have to start every day and be built every day. And it really is about cultivating those relationships and listening, learning, and understanding, what our Black sisters, for us at the YWCA and our work need, and being able to stand with them and support them in that. So, it's a process. It's a daily process. There's always more to learn. And it really is about, listening for sure. In terms of challenging systemic racism, it's obviously everything that we do at the YWCA. I've stood with our now Attorney General in New Jersey, who was a few years back our prosecutor in Bergen County, and sat with him as he trained the entire chiefs of police in Bergen County about implicit bias. And the work is real. It's deep. I've worked with our child protective service systems in New Jersey, and tried to educate people, white people of power, in the systems to understand that power. But again, it's a process, and we really, at times like this, everybody rallies. But the important thing is to, and I'm grateful that Deirdre asked me to be part of this, and grateful that conversations like this are now happening, is that, people need to now go beyond putting that black square in their Facebook page, and on their social media pages. Now they actually have to stand up and educate themselves and learn and start relationships and build from there, because that really is the only place that we can get to it. There's no way that I can sit down with a chief of police, or that I can sit down with someone who's a leader in child protective service, and try to discuss these issues without having a relationship. You need that relationship, because these are very sensitive conversations. And I'm very grateful to the, many Black women in my lives who, had who shared, their story with me and trusted me with it, because I understand that, that is a tremendous trust, that they've shared their struggles and their stories. And, it's helped me learn and understand. And then, together we've been able to make plans for our community. And I'm grateful to, many of the women who have, led me here and continue to.
Something that that you just said that really sticks out and really resonates with me, because this week I have been having this conversation a lot. It is not to say that I have never had it. I have had it, but the series of events have most certainly perpetuated it. And so I found myself in one of my very, very first conversations. And I think that is also important when I talk about that we are all in different stages of our understanding of what race is. And I will come back for those of you that, we will talk a little bit more to help understand and equip you to be able to talk about the systemic side of racism. But it became clear to me in having the conversation with one of my friends that she was completely unaware. So much so that she asked me, well, I just think you're confused about this. And so as we begin to have these conversations, there are some things that we want to make sure that we equip you with, because the last thing that we want you to do is to say something that makes your friend, family member for that matter, because there are those of us that have people of different races that are married, into the family, being able to understand that just because you've had the privilege of not knowing that it exists does not mean that it does not. And I want to set the stage for that. And I'll give a couple examples. There are times when I have gone to the gas station and I did not have to check my checking account before I filled up my tank. That is a privilege that some who are living paycheck to paycheck do not have. There are some of us as women whom have gone into workplaces or environments or meetings and recognized that another man had as it related to understanding or being included in certain groups. And because you were a woman, you very quickly recognized the difference between his privilege and the one that you did not. Well, as a Black woman or a Black man in America living in our skin, those of you that do not have that skin have the privilege of not knowing the things that we experience on a daily basis. So it is very important to put that into perspective when you begin to educate them on what you think it really is. So with that being said, we're talking about being at all different stages, of where we are. The last thing that we want to do, especially with all the hurt that we have going on today, we don't want to continue the hurt. It is important that we take a pause and we listen. And then take the opportunity to do the work and to find out. You'll hear a lot of things online where they talk about being tone deaf. What they're essentially saying is you're not listening. And I need you to stop for a moment and take a moment and listen. So I'm going to come, Dina, I'm going to come to you and Kathy, because what I really appreciated about both of you as, reaching out to have this conversation is the admittance of, what, I'm not really sure. I've never done this publicly. I've never talked about this publicly. I know what I believe. I know what I don't like, but there are so many people that are so farther ahead of this than I am. But the important reason why I wanted you here is you're not alone. There are a lot of white women that absolutely do not agree, but they're not really certain where to start. Can you talk to us a little bit about what it's like with what's going on? And Kathy, we'll start with you, and then Dina, if you'll chime in, what it's like to be caught as a deer in headlights in a topic that is very, very sensitive, however, you feel very, very passionately about.
Are you muted?
Oh, she's off now. There you go.
Thank you. I have thought that I was dealing with racism and fighting racism since the 60s. But what I've learned over time, especially recently, is I've made a lot of mistakes and I have a lot to learn. And so the things that I've done, I haven't necessarily done what I thought I was doing, nor have I done it well. So yes, I do feel like a deer in the headlights because it's such a revelation to me that all these years when I thought I was doing the right thing, I may not have been. Tawana and you and I were talking yesterday. I remember saying that it hasn't been that long ago when my approach to mixed race groups is let's look for our similarities. And while I still think that's important, what my friends have made me very aware of recently is that I have to respect the differences. It's not a matter of just seeing the similarities. That's important. But there are differences, and I in not noticing those differences, I'm disrespecting those differences, and so that's been an amazing lesson for me. And I have a lot more to learn, and always will. I have a feeling.
Dina,
Muted, Dina.
I'm not.
there you are.
You unmuting me? Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, it's all around us, right? And unfortunately, it takes times like this where we're like kind of, forced to feel that uncomfortableness around what's happening. And I guess I knew or found out that I grew up with privilege. Although where I grew up, I didn't feel like I was. I actually felt like I didn't fit in that well. So. As I grew up, I've been to different places. I've seen different cultures. I've seen, poverty when we lived in South Africa, and it's stunning to me how people do not see other people as people. But what really struck me this week, and what's made me think so hard, is woman to woman, mother to mother. What would I tell my boys who are 19 and 17? What would I tell them if they were two Black boys who had to navigate not only just their everyday lives, but being teenagers, being boys, saying and doing different things? I think about my Black friends who have sons and what they must be going through. Like, what are those conversations they're having? And I try and actually point that out to my boys because, when we lived in South Africa, I said to them, like, when we were the only white people, in a place, I was like, do you feel that? Like, do you feel what it's like to be the only white person in a room? Like, okay, now you maybe can understand a little bit about what, Black people must feel like when they come into a room of all white people and how uncomfortable that is and how they have to change their behavior. So for me, I also feel, I also feel like, as a woman, I've seen things happen to other women where it's like, oh, you don't get a seat at the table because you're not, your voice doesn't count. And it hurts. And so I think if we can just kind of remember back to maybe those instances we've had in our lives where we felt uncomfortable or we've seen something happen that's maybe, like really off and you're like, ooh, that's like, that doesn't sit well with me. Bring those feelings back and just kind of sit with them and try and, imagine yourself in that person's shoes. I mean, that's all I can really do. And on a day-to-day basis, just trying to put myself in other people's shoes and be like, whoa, okay, like I need to think about this and really understand like what is going on here. And I try and instill that in my sons, but teenage boys are teenage boys and they're like, Mom, it's fine. Like, they have all friends from all different walks of life, and they just sometimes they wonder like, Mom, why are you making such a big deal out of this? And I'm like, because it is a big deal and like we need to address it. So yeah, it's
I would like to share with you all some behaviors that white people use that are indifferent and minimization. Okay. So if you are doing any of those things, you need to stop. Indifference. Politics doesn't affect me. Well, that's a privilege. That's a privilege that you don't have to be concerned because you're always going to get to vote for a white male president. We don't have that privilege, okay? So if you're doing that, you need to stop. Avoiding confrontation with racist people. I don't care if it's your mother, okay? You need to stop. Now let's talk about some minimization. And I've been on Nextdoor all week fighting with white people because they want to tell me, if they made it all lives matter instead of Black Lives Matter, we could get behind it. Guess what? We don't need you to tell us what's important to us. That's like saying your house is on fire. And when the fire department comes, they're going to spray every house because your house is important too. Well, guess what? Your house isn't on fire. Okay, so stop it. Stop it. If you don't want to support it, don't support it. But stop trying to tell us, okay, what we need to call our movements. Okay? You deny your privilege. One of the things that Jane Elliott says, and she is 85 years old now. She is the one who started Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes back in the 60s as a teacher. And what she'll say to white audiences, anybody in this audience who would trade places with a Black person, please stand up. She goes, oh, nobody stood up. You must have not understood the question. Let me say it again. Anybody who would trade places with a Black person in this society, please stand up. And then she says, okay. That tells me you know what's going on. You know you don't want it for you, Why are you okay with having it happen to your Black neighbors? Okay, so let's establish that right up front. You know, I'm not buying in this. I didn't know. If you're denying your privilege and your knowledge of racism, stop it. Color blindness. Oh, I don't see color. You know, you are making us invisible. You are denying our reality. You are denying that people who don't look like you exist. Why can't we all just get along? Love is love. Stop it. If you're using that tactic, stop. You know why we can't all get along, because of white supremacy, okay? When you speak over people of color, you know, I can't say anymore. When we're having these types of discussions, you need to be listening, okay? You need to be taking your cues from people who are on the front line fighting racism. False equivalency. Okay, these are the people who say, well, I grew up poor and I pulled myself out of bootstraps. Okay, stop it. You didn't grow up poor because your skin was Black, okay? My stepfather joined the military. He was a third generation out of poverty. He was from Hopkinsville, Kentucky. And you know why Black men did that? Because they hoped to get opportunities that he would never have gotten in Hopkinsville as a Black man 3 generations out of slavery. So stop the false equivalency. We all belong to the human race. Stop it. And I'm going to let someone else talk now. And I hope that you will find get over slavery. That's enough. Well, can't you just get over it? Well, I don't hear you telling Jewish people to get over the Holocaust. Stop. You don't get over slavery. We now know that trauma is in your DNA. And when white people like to talk about how violent Black people are, guess where they learn that violence? From you all. So stop it.
Well, we gonna stop it. I want to come back, Regina, because there are so many of the things that you just mentioned that not that they have not always happened, but you think that as we're going through what we're going through in America right now, that people might back up from some of that. And I also want to talk about an aha moment. And we shared this discussion yesterday. And then I really do want to get some feedback from some of those that are on in regards to what Regina had shared. And I do want to share this. Speaking with a friend a few days ago, admitting, I did not realize that when I was raising my children to not see color, that I was doing them a disservice. I, in my heart of hearts, wanted them to treat everybody the same, right? So today, our goal is to equip people, because we can give them a reason of what they have to stop, but we also have to equip them on the why. Because for you to not see color means that you do not see what happens in my culture associated with my color. And if you can't see those things, then you won't understand the good of my culture, and you won't understand the bad of my culture. So it is extremely important that you all begin to see color, because the more that you begin to see color, you'll explore. One of the things that someone said to me some time ago, and it was so profound. Another Black woman looked at me, and we were talking about race, and she talked about how Black women exist in the workplace. And she said, the reason why we are such chameleons is because we have spent our entire lives understanding other people so that we can exist in all of these different spaces. Whereas most of these spaces, if they're predominantly white, you don't have to figure out how other cultures work, because you don't have to navigate through them. And that was one of the most profound things. And I realized, you know what? I have taken a lot of time to understand other people's spaces so that I could understand how to navigate those spaces. So, I wanted to, talk about that, because for all of our white women that are on here, it is mission critical to the health of our country, to the well-being of lives, to peace in our communities, that we begin to understand the music, the food, the nuances, the hurt, the pain of these other communities so that we can put an end to it. And I had this conversation with women for really one reason and one reason only, because very often, more often than not, unfortunately, men get involved in certain things. They push us out on the background only to say, when the shit hits the fan, excuse my French, can you come in here and help me fix this? And so that's where we are today. Shit has hit the fan and it's time to fix it. So what I also want to talk about, we've been talking about the women or people, right, that understand, don't understand, are denying. But let's also talk about our white women that are angry. And I also shared that right now we're at a stage where I told someone, I don't think we're going back. We will never be the same as to what it was before. We saw those.
We said that in 1968. I just want to remind you, when Dr. King was murdered, the same thing. We went through this. As a matter of fact, I have white people who will say, Dr. King changed the world with nonviolence. And I say, oh, really? So why are we back here 50 plus years after Dr. King died with the same shit?
I'll tell you this one thing, Regina, and I'll let you come back on that, because here's the one thing that I do see different between the protests that we saw in the 60s and the protests that we're seeing today. I am not seeing all Black lives protesting. Right. I am not seeing all Black lives demanding change. I am seeing the very women that are married to, working for, or employing people that are causing this systemic issue to exist begin to challenge the very systems that exist. And Kathy, it might have been you, it may have been someone else, because they asked me, what do you think is different? I said, it's one thing for Black women to be angry. We've been framed as angry our entire lives the moment that we get upset. But you band that with white women getting angry, the same women that make or break what that man's weekend or what his evening might look like. That's happening across America. Those are the sort of things that shift, and those are the sort of things that change. And when you have corporate America, where majority of all the CEOs are white men that are married to these angry white women that are demanding change because they want their neighborhood and their grandchildren to grow up in a better world, I do not believe we're going to go back. Now, whether or not we'll make the sort of progress that I wish and that I hope for, but I definitely think that we're in a different place. But that's my opinion.
I'd like to throw out 2 pieces of reading material for white women, because I think one of the things is white people are allowed to be individuals. Okay, like those of us of color, we are all monolith when it comes to this society. All Black people are angry and thieves and looters. All Hispanic people are lazy, So I need you to read Waking Up White. That's the #1 book. And that book tells you about the white culture that we are all in, okay? Perfectionism, being nice. One of the reasons why we chose dinners is because white women have been programmed and raised to be nice. You don't leave the dinner table. You sit and you listen and you're polite. So that's why we chose that revenue. The other one is white fragility. There are some cultural things that keep white people from hearing the message. And Robin DiAngelo, who is a white woman, so is the lady who wrote Waking Up White, they break that down for you. Why we can't have these conversations, because when you hear us saying racist, you hear us saying you're a racist. What we're saying is the United States culture is a white supremacy culture. All the systems are put in place to benefit you and to hold Black people down. So read those 2 books.
Thank you. Thank you, Regina. Nikki, I know you've been sitting there with some things to say. I'm sure we all do, but I would like you to chime in. Are we able to move forward? Will we see change?
Well, first of all, is my mic working okay?
Yes, we
It
can.
is.
Guys, can you hear me
It's
okay?
very
I think
soft.
I was messing up the whole. Is it?
Yeah.
I'm on my phone, so okay, I'll try to yell. So sorry. Is this better?
It's a little better. Yes.
Here, let me hold it. Let me just hold it. Your question was, is this better, or will we get better, Tawana? I can't hear you. You got your mic muted, hon.
Do you think that we will see change?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I think that we will see change. And I think the change I think that we will see transformation. So change in my mind is iterative. It's tweaking. It's like ounces of progression. Transformation, though, means bringing into existence tomorrow that which does not exist today. And I think this moment, this racial tension, this rise against racism, much like, interestingly enough, COVID-19 has reset permanently a paradigm for the way that Americans operate in their daily lives. And the reason why I say that is because there's just a different kind of awakening now. And I think it's because we've commanded the attention of the world at a time where the world was sitting down already. So we were already in the midst of quarantine, already burdened by this horrible pandemic, and already in a position of vulnerability. And so on top of that, we are now seeing with different eyes and hearing with different ears the cries and the pleas of Black people. And I think it's touching our hearts in a different way. And it's awakening two things. If you hated Black people before, you really hate us now. And if you loved or liked us before, it's even more so now. So my prayer is that the latter is more prominent than the former. But I do think that there will be change, and I'm happy to see emerging across America's cities, and Louisville chief among them, concerted conversations around a call to action, manifestos and covenants, if you will, that Black America will be demanding. 400 years in the making, albeit, but demands nonetheless, because we have, what's happened now is that the sleeping giant is awake. And I'm not just talking about the Black giant, I'm talking about the giant of human consciousness and human decency, which has not typically attached to the plight, to our plight. So I'm happy to see that that's happening now. And, I think we will see a lot of transformation, but honestly, that will be dependent on a lot of these viewers for this discussion, and a lot of our white allies.
I just wanted to say that what Regina had said really made me think. Like, what I remember being like, yeah, you don't ruffle any feathers. Like, don't make a fuss.
That's
like
part of your culture.
If you want to like fit in, then like act like one of the boys, or stuff like that. And I was an athlete growing up, so like I could play sports with the boys, so I felt like like, oh, okay, they're like they I'm okay because I can do what they do. But in other instances, I was like, oh, I better not say anything, because like I don't want anyone to think less of me or think that I'm a troublemaker or whatever. And like what you say, I think is really true. It's kind of like, I didn't really think about that. I mean, I it's like, oh, walk away. Don't get involved. And that, I don't know if I was specifically taught that, or that was the environment I was in, or that's
part of white culture, is that you be nice, that you don't make a scene, that everybody has to be nice. That is part of your culture, and you were taught that.
And a culture of trying to please, have everybody, like you, or be, and really, that is absolutely the opposite, I think, of what's happening now. It's like, I don't have to agree with you, and I don't have to feel bad about it. And if I see something,
say something.
If I see something, I'll be like, dude, that's not cool. Like, what are you doing? It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to fight you or whatever. But it could be like a maturity thing. It could be a confidence thing. It could be like the environment you grew up in or whatever. But I appreciate what you said, because I know it, but I never heard that before.
Read Waking Up White. It is a great book.
I would also like to say that in order for, I agree with the transformation, the whole issue of that transformation, that we are in a transformational time, and transformation is just uncomfortable. It just is. And so in order for us to really transform, we have to learn to live with discomfort.
Yep.
And I think that that's hard. That's hard for people, but I think it's something we just have to do. And the other thing I wanted to add, a number of you talked about understanding the culture, understanding the differences. And I started by saying that's something that's very important for me to learn. And also, I think understanding my own culture is important for me, because I think what happens with me, and probably with a number of us, is we take our own culture for granted, and we don't really dig in to what it is, what our culture has given us, both good and bad. And so we've got to be able to live with that discomfort too. What is it about our culture that we are not aware of, in addition to what is it about your culture that we're not aware of? Because it takes self-awareness as well as listening to other people in order to transform.
Well, and white people do have a culture, and it's different than our culture. So, when we're trying to act within a white, I retired in 1994, years ago. But one of the things, I always heard is, oh, you're too loud. Oh, you're too this. Oh, you're too that. And I'm like, I'm Black, okay? Get over it.
Get over it.
That is so important to understand, is that it does tie back to culture. Yeah. And your culture can be influenced geographically. Those things are just so important to understand. I wanted to just share a few comments here. And actually, I'm going to share one because I do have a treat for you all today. We have a good friend of mine, a biracial woman. And, it's hard enough when the subject is Black or white, but standing in the middle of it all, God bless her. So I'm really looking forward. It's a treat. And she wrote this piece just for all of us here today. So I'm going to come to that. But I did want to mention Alicia, and Alicia, please forgive me if I don't butcher this name. I mess it up every time. Ariadne. And she mentioned that she started a white woman book club to read these in small groups and challenge yourselves to learn. I am interested in how that goes without having any people of color part of that dialogue. However, I do think that's a great idea. Pick up these books, learn, explore, etc. But I would like to take you all to this video. Now, bear with me, because this is the first time that I was not able to bring a video in the system on stage because of the size. So I'm going to be sharing my screen in order to do that. And so if you'll bear with me, we're going to transition here in just a moment.
Hey, my name is Robin G. I am a poet here in Louisville, Kentucky, and I wrote an original piece that kind of expresses how it feels for me personally to be a Black woman with a white mother, to be biracial, especially amidst the climate that we're experiencing in this moment. So I will let the poetry do the talking, and I will share the piece. Our conversations hit different. Dinner table chatter differs from your privileged plated endeavors, and although I will never deny you the imperfections that you live with, there is a substantial difference between our dealings. My son turning 16 is a birthright, and preparing for him to drive should be exciting, but see, he's a Black boy who stands over 6 feet tall, and his hair is high and it's kinky, and he mumbles when he talks, and I am deathly afraid that he'll die at the hands of a man that vowed to protect and serve during a routine traffic stop, because my son exudes a threat that he doesn't deserve. And my nerves keep me awake at night. Do we share the same sentiment? My skin is light, my mother is white, but the melanin that my father gifted me with is loud and proud and Black and rich, and the presumption that my experience is lessened because my skin is lighter and my hair is finer is bullshit. Stand beside me, drenched in your entitlement, and bear witness to the contrast of my light skin to your whiteness in the eyes of society, and then try to exempt me from the war against my community. See, my mother being white doesn't afford me an ounce of immunity because her skin belongs to her and this skin is mine. So come better than trying to define me in a way that comforts you. My melanin is as deeply embedded into my spirit as yours. We share the same ancestors and we dance to the same rhythm and we sing the same blues, and my hue doesn't change that. There should be no need for me to defend my Blackness backed against walls that house pain and triumph. It is an argument synonymous with defending an enunciation that isn't expected of us. See, I was born to and raised by a white woman, but I am a goddess of color, enriched in the culture, paying homage to the heritage and art form. I am a Black woman, and I am unapologetic to all the aesthetics that come with being one.
Amen, girl.
Woo! I just have to say, there has been a lot of discussion for Robin amongst those in her circle of influence that are Caucasian, that have made the assumption that things are easier for her because she is biracial. And if the fact that a biracial woman has expressed the nuances that she's experienced in our society because there is melanin in her skin, I don't know what else to give America to recognize that we have got to fix this. Helen, I want to come back to you. I just want to get you're working in this space. I'm certain that you have people, biracial, Black. What can you give us some of the things that your organization comes up against, especially when you're dealing with someone like Robin?
Well, I think, I have to say, obviously I don't live the experience. I think in terms of the, supporting Robin, who obviously, as she shared, identifies as a Black woman, supporting Black women. The important thing is, again, to listen, to create space, as Regina said, to stop it. we need to stop it as white women. And we need to be, as was said as well, we need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and learn about cultures and understand that her being biracial is part of a culture as well. And that she has a different struggle, but it's nonetheless a struggle, as well. At the YWCA, one of the things that we have offered to our community, and I personally have been through, is the Undoing Racism training. And I encourage people to read the books that Regina, has mentioned as well. because, this is where we do start to gain an understanding. You sit side by side with, people of, Black women, brown women, people of men, people of different color, people of different stature in the communities, and together learn and understand, and gain an understanding more about yourself, and with the more you learn, I should say for myself, the more I know I need to learn. It's almost, it almost creates that environment. So, our support for her, our support for all Black women is to listen and to create a space for them, to create opportunity for them, to stand with them, and to, listen to what they need, and provide opportunity. We host the, we believe in supporting economic advancement, of Black businesses, in our organization, and creating opportunity for that and getting that information, out to our community. We have brought the Bergen County Black Business Network under our umbrella for exactly that reason, to help, that's part of, for our, what I've learned and what I continue to learn is creating that economic equality. We've actively created events and opportunities to get women to run for office, and to put them in situations where they're thinking about and understanding and speaking to other Black women that are assemblywomen, are senators in our state of New Jersey, to be able to understand what it took for them, what barriers they had to overcome, and what supports they were able to put in place so that they can model that and then they can run for office. Again, we're never going to see these changes till we get white men out of the positions of power and get more Black women and more women of color in the community, in positions of power, across our country. So, from our perspective, we're just trying to build that capacity for Black women and listen to them, whether they're biracial, whether they're Black, and this is just our opportunity. And I encourage, I encourage white women to, again, you really have to, the more you learn, understand, the more you need to learn. I'm a mother of 7-year-old twins. I had my 7-year-old twins at the same time as one of our former board members had her baby. She's a Black woman. We spent a lot of time talking about how different it was for the two of us to raise our children. And she was very gracious, and with some other board members of ours, will be sharing a conversation with me on Facebook Live next week about raising our sons and how we have to have different discussions with them. Because, white mothers, and I applaud you for saying that, because I do think that's where a lot of the work happens, is mothers, we have to start there, hopefully, that a mother will understand that I don't have to have those same conversations with my son. And my son needs to understand, and my daughter as well, as I'm raising them, that I want to raise anti-racist children. I need to actively help other parents raise anti-racist children. I think that's one of the, if anything, a hope also that we see is there are so many young people, involved in this movement and sharing their truths as well, and, supporting them from a young age, so that, I was just having this conversation with the woman that I was sharing, who, as I said, our children are the same age. And she said to me, I try to talk to my son and he says, well, I'm friends with everybody, mommy. And she doesn't want to change that experience for him and say, but you're Black and you have to be worried about these things. She said she wanted him to, grow up, feeling like, he's part of everybody. I want our children together to be able to make that world for her son and for my son. And I don't want my son to not stand up and say, I want to be a Black man. I want my son to be able to feel that being a Black man or being a white man, it's really about who you are and what you bring, to us as a society together. And that culture that we all may look different, but we all have very important attributes, very, important feelings and thoughts to bring into our systems and our communities to make those changes that we're all looking for.
I really, really do appreciate that, Helen. I think that that was extremely well said. And as I predicted, it is 2:59 and we have just a minute left. And I do like to do our best to stop on time because the networking is absolutely amazing. And so we have opened that up for everyone today. And I look forward to you all continuing the dialogue and meeting someone that you don't know. We are all here with the intent of learning how to stand up and speak out. But before we close, I would like for all of you to just go around. Again, I want to be respectful of time, so if we could keep it to 30 seconds or less. Some advice for regardless of where you are in the stage on understanding race, some advice that you can leave with those so that we can make our country a better place.
I'll start. I think we have to stop being afraid. Fear is what stops you. Fear is what keeps you from being the human being you're meant to be. So let's stop being afraid of, what our dads think, what our moms think, what your neighbors think, and do what's right. We owe it to each other to have an earth that we can all share in harmony. And I understand it sounds like a distant dream and hope, but if we all stop being afraid, we can make it happen.
Thank you. Thank you, Regina.
I would just like to say that I'm just really appreciative to hear straight up what people are thinking, because sometimes I think people are afraid to tell us that we're doing something wrong. But I think it's incumbent upon white women and men to do their homework and to have the conversations, but come to it from a place of hey, I read this book and here's what I learned. What do you think? Instead of tell me what I should do, and have the burden be on that person to explain stuff to me. So I am definitely going to read those books, and I hope we can regroup maybe in a while and see how we've all made some strides.
Thank you.
For me, it's about humility and discomfort. And as a white woman, I need to live with my discomfort, and I need to be humble in terms of what I understand and don't understand. And I think that I need to understand that that I need to learn and that I need to listen. And listening more than talking is going to be important for me. And I would recommend that to other white women as well.
I'd say, I'm hoping you guys can hear me. I'd say two things very actionable. When you hang this phone up or when you log off, call your Chamber of Commerce and the members of the Chamber of Commerce in your city and ask them to construct a specific council dedicated to determining the extent to which racism has impeded your city's ability to see real strides in education, workforce development, criminal justice reform, healthcare access. So ask specifically, and I'm saying this because our chamber, thankfully in Louisville, is about this work, is soon going to announce this. These are the folks that need to own that responsibility because they are pushing the city forward. You cannot push the city forward without unearthing racist programming and ideology that has permeated each of those areas. And the second thing I'd ask white women to do specifically is to begin to socialize the idea that we need significant policing reform. Police and how Black and brown bodies are policed and how Black and brown communities are policed. We have to have significant reform with federal oversight.
Thank you, Nikki.
And maybe I'll just say too, and add is, I do encourage all women to really learn about white privilege and really educate themselves on it. I know we've heard the term a lot, and sometimes, again, you can be comfortable with the discomfort, but really learn and understand it. That even when you go ask, a Black woman a question to understand something, that's your privilege, allowing you to go there and ask. But I also encourage you to vote. Make sure you're voting for people and putting people in office that are Black and brown and people of color, and because quite frank, and really, really think about that vote and who you put in there. I encourage everyone to fill out the census. That's how a lot of our, money across, nationally gets portioned out into our communities for services. And to participate, learn and participate in your communities, get in touch with organizations like the YWCA and other important organizations that are doing this work so that you can figure out how to align yourselves and be part of efforts that are dismantling racism and working on structural racism, whether it's in the police area, which of course it's important, but in areas like child welfare, other areas, again, these are all places that are really, really impacting, Black and brown children from getting ahead, education systems, all of these areas that we really have to make an impact on structural racism. It's embedded in every one of our systems, every one of them.
Did I talk?
Ladies, and I want to be respectful of time, and there are some people that did pay. And so because we're opening it up in the spirit of really wanting this dialogue to continue for people to make connections, I do need to stop us now. A few things that I would like to share with you all. The state of belonging right now it's feeling very different for many communities, and we need every single one of you that have chimed in with us today to please go to derbydiversity.com, and there is a survey that you can click or access on the homepage. It is called the State of Innovation and Belonging in Diversity. We need your voices. We need your voices, and we need other people to take this because it's scientific data that will help back up the work that we are continuing to do and why it is so important. In addition, there are still so many topics on this discussion that we haven't even skimmed the surface with today. So because of that, and looking at the feedback from the various different platforms, I would like to have a part 2, if it is something that you all do feel that we need, a follow-up of sorts, especially for those who are at the very beginning of their journey. Click the poll tab, which is next to the chat tab, backstage, click the poll tab and either yes or no. Based on the response, that will determine whether or not we will bring this back and begin to really dive into what is happening as far as current events are concerned. Last but not least, networking. That is where we're getting ready to head. I want to share with everyone how that works. So for networking, on the left side of your screen, it's probably already says now. You can click that red now button, and it will take you to another screen where you can have one-on-one dialogue with another individual. All you need to do is click ready. Once you click ready, you will begin having random camera to camera meetings. Listen, if you're going to dive in and already in an uncomfortable topic, why not get uncomfortable today and meet somebody new that shares the values on turning the corner on the ugly truth that is really just ripped across America this past week. In order for both of you to stay connected, it's really important. There's a blue button at the top of your screen. You both must hit connect in order for their contact information to show up on your dashboard. Think of it as like business cards when you're at a trade show or a conference. So I look forward to seeing you in networking, but just a few words before we wrap. It is so critical that we stand up. We must not only say the name of the Black lives taken unlawfully, we must speak up and begin to call the racist by name. They're the ones that should feel uncomfortable. We need white America who see the racist gestures and hear the racist comments spoken. When no Black and brown people are in the room, call them out by name. Get over your fear, because that's how we're going to get back to peace and rest. We need to remove them from our police departments, from high places of power, because they have no desire to see your Black brothers and sisters succeed if they think it's funny about how race has impacted us to date. I thank you so very much for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you next week when we discuss being professional while Black, especially in the climate that we're in. Thank you so very much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you in networking.